Queensland State of Origin selections. They seem to be dominating the headlines, the majority of it. It looks like, and if you listen to all reports, that Daly Cherry Evans' Origin career looks set to be stopped. It's being reported that Billy Slater most likely will go with Tom Dearden. Now, he's just spoken on Channel 9 and he was asked how hard this week has been with all the speculation around DCE and whether or not he'd be in the side. Here's what Billy Slater said just a minute ago.
Well, this week has been no different to any other week leading into an Origin game. You know, you've got to sit there, and the one thing that I make sure I do is I spend the time to understand everyone's habits in their games, and you've got to look at what the team needs and you work from there. So it's every position, every game is pretty much identical.
Yeah, thanks to Channel 9. James Hooper, I'll start with you. The mail is that Daly looks set to be dropped. It's unheard of from Queensland's perspective that a captain would get dropped. I don't necessarily agree with it, but Billy obviously needs to win this game in Perth.
Yeah, it's a big call and a brave call from Billy, but we know how meticulous Billy Slater is when it comes to his preparation. He's got a home theatre at his house down in Melbourne, and I know that he watches every single game repeatedly with a specific focus on anybody who might be in the mix for selection in the Queensland squad. So I actually think the word around Dobbo is that Queensland will make 6 changes. The only player who will be axed is Daly Cherry Evans. Tom Dearden will be the number 7. But then there'll be a number of other shifts in terms of the 17. So I think Val Holmes will go from the left wing to left centre. Xavier Coates will go from the right wing to the left wing. Hammer from right wing to left. Trent Liero to start at lock, and Pat Carrigan back to the bench is all the types of things that have been spoken about as being in the mix.
Gordy, your thoughts as a Queensland captain?
Oh, wait. Well, we got to win. It's about now.
Yep.
Right, and people talk about loyalty, but it's about now. It's about winning. And if we had the luxury and we're up one game and everything was going great, we could probably sit there and give them enough time. I've always said, and I'll say after game 1, tell me who comes in that changes that result.
Yeah, well,
I don't think there's anybody. I think it's about the 17 that was there that's got to change their mindset that can change that result. Tommy Dearden, does he deserve his chance? I think every Queenslander goes out there and orders Daly Cherry Evans deserve to lose his jersey. Well, that's above my pay grade, but they know the style that they want to play. I don't know what they expected from the players there. I wasn't in camp, but it's going to be our greatest challenge. I think we don't play well in Perth, and we need to get the job done. We need to improve. We're up against a giant at the moment. I take it back to my era when Andrew Johns wore 14. I think we're back in that category as Queenslanders where New South Wales have a better roster. They're big, they're strong, they're all working, and that's the good side. But no one talks about how hard New South Wales have worked in defence. It's a hard-working unit. We're not scoring a lot of points against them. How we change that? Well, we got 10 days to turn it around.
James Graham, are you surprised that if this is right, and Gordy's made that statement just a minute ago, that we won't really know till that side gets announced tomorrow, but Horsburgh and Jai Arrow were 2 names that were being tossed around. It looks like, my understanding is Horsburgh will be in an extended squad, but there won't be any changes, Hoops is right, to that starting 17 with the forwards. Are you surprised by that?
Yeah, just quickly on the DCE situation, the fact that Coach Slater hasn't come out and publicly backed him, I think that leads to the fact that they will make that change and bring in Tommy Dearden, and then Kurt Mann assumes that utility role that Tommy Dearden was holding down in the 14 jersey. For me, the actual game itself, and it's spoken about who's going to change that. That particular performance, it was lost in some say the opening set, but certainly in the opening 10 minutes where discipline let them down. And I think some changes were needed. Look, on a personal level, and again, I'm not privy to the knowledge of what Coach Slater is looking for in his team and what movements and what traits and behaviours he wants to see in those opening exchanges, what he thinks can make a difference to that team. Personally, I'd love to see Lindsay Collins start. I think he is one of the best front rowers in the comp. I understand he's had injury concerns, but I really would love to see him in the starting team. And then the points of difference that Horsburgh in particular and Jairo bring, when I look at Trent Liero, I think, those two players bring more. But again, I'm not watching the game with the level of detail that Coach Slater is. So, we know that probably Arrow and Corey Horsburgh are probably more attacking style middles. I think with Horsburgh, especially the fact that he's in a winning team at Canberra, really should elevate him. I'm even looking at maybe Mo Fodawaker, who, worked tirelessly. But, you've got the winning attitude of Corey Horsburgh off the bench. If Collins was to start, I think, look, that's just a personal thing on where I'd go.
Yeah, I think Collins will come off the bench, and I think Queensland's never good, and you can speak from this, that they've never panicked in these moments. And they have traditionally, regardless of the result, generally speaking, stuck loyal.
We
and
don't
this
have
looks
the
like,
talent to pick from.
Yeah.
The same as everybody teases New South Wales and say that they changed. Well, they might have 5 back rows to pick from, right? So then when they do, and we might throw a few, bullets at them, but we don't have the same amount of talent. I reckon we probably got 30% of the, NRL to pick
roster,
from, and then we pick Queenslanders. And if we pick 2 sides, well, our second side probably certainly wouldn't stand up. So that's where we're at. Horsburgh's a funny one, I love his passion. I love that. Are there too many mistakes around him? Are there too many penalties? We saw there was Harry Grant stick his foot out. We saw that Tino gave away a penalty. We saw, I think, Munster give away a penalty, and there was 3 tries, roughly. So does Horsburgh have the discipline?
at Origin level.
At Origin level.
Yeah, it's a very valid
and then
question.
then I'm looking at his passion. I'm looking at the impact that he can make. I'm looking at what he would bring. But with the good comes the bad as well, and that's probably what they've. I don't know. I'm not in the selection room, but that's probably something out there. If everybody's going, oh, well, just change. Well, you got to look at their whole game. And I love Corey Horsburgh. I love the way he plays, and he's making a huge impact. And it makes sense when you got Tino and Mo. They're going to play Origin, and the Titans are sitting on rock bottom at the moment. So how does their confidence come in? So you make valid points, but that's why Billy and his staff will make the best decisions, and that's why I don't go against them, because they've got all the information and they're going to make the best decision. What is good for our state to win this second game?
Hoops, who do you think will captain the side? Like if you take Cherry Evans out, you've got Tino, you've got Munster there in that starting.
Why are we sacking DCE until it happens?
Well, we're not, but just all roads point.
But journalists do get it wrong.
No, Gordy, the mail has been very strong. The mail has been very strong for ever since the game, ever since Origin 1. It has been the talk of the town. I think it is going to happen. And we need to ask you, because you've captained the state and you want to talk about brave coaching calls in terms of the Maroons' history. Well, Wayne Bennett changed the team back and you ended up captaining that side and you won that series.
Yes, in 2000. But I was young. I was 20. I was 27. The guy that's there now is 37. So there's 2 ways of looking at it. Was DCE that bad? Right? Answer that. I'd say no.
But
it's not just that. If I'm in his shoes, do I have one more great game in me for this state? Do I have 2 more great games? Like that's what I'd be thinking. Hey, do I have this great game in me? Do I?
But it's not going to be up to him. It's going to be up to Billy and the selectors. It's going to be up to Billy and Darren Lockyer.
I reckon, if you put yourself in Coach Slater's shoes, and we talk about how much detail he goes into and his observations of all the players that are available for Queensland, it wouldn't surprise me if he's actually taken the time to go and sit with DCE this past week and actually, as a man, have a conversation with him and get that feel from him. If he answering Gordy's question of does he have 2 games left in him, like has he got that in his locker? And actually have that conversation with him face to face, not over the phone, not on FaceTime. It's a man-to-man conversation, and you get a feel for it.
You'd think that would have happened, but you think that Daly would know by now. And I reckon you're right, Gordon. I actually agree with you here.
Well, that's the question, right? So if I'm in this situation...
Has he got enough equity after 26 Origin games to you know.
Or the question is, does Tommy Dearden have the gumption to grab this team on his back with the kicking game and go, you follow me? That's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
I reckon the answer
I've been
to that
in this
question is
situation,
yes.
right? And as good as our forward packs are, we look to our 7 for reassurance, right? So you're going into the battle and you're going, and then sometimes because your head's over it and you're right in the middle of the fire, you don't know how you're going, and then you get your halfback, go, boys, mate, we're going there, start doing this or whatever, and there's these little tweaks on the run. So I don't know.
Gordy, I've heard you say no one owns the jersey
No one does.
at State of Origin level, and I think it's not just about the most recent State of Origin one, but if you go back to last year's series, and Queensland ultimately were beaten in that series, they lost the last 2 games. So that's 3 games in succession. I think that's what Billy's really been reviewing and wrestling with over the course of the last couple of weeks since the opening.
Yep, and he watches every bit of footage, and like I know that we talk about that, and he's watched when Dearden's come on, has it changed? We're not scoring points. We look at Harry Grant. I thought it was probably a game that he would like to forget, like his first ever, his first State of Origin match. I thought it was really, really poor for the level of football that Harry plays, and then. Ponga, would he like another go at it? And Munster. So they're our big 4. And on any given day, we know how dangerous they are. They carry sides on their own. But they just haven't been able to carry us at the moment.
It will be interesting. That side gets named at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, knowing full well that there is a game in play, and Kurt Mann is expected to be the 14.
I thought both states asked because there's a game on, just to show respect for the guys that are playing Monday afternoon.
Queensland are getting named at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Don't we have anybody playing on Monday afternoon?
Kurt Mann's playing for the
Kurt
Dogs.
Mann's going to be the 14, but he's the only one.
Well, he was in it last time.
We've got a lot
Congratulations, Robbo. You said the Warriors are on top and they're coming second.
Well, they're on top at Shark Park last night, and let's
Is
just
that
talk
what you
about
meant
that.
to
That's
say?
what I was meaning. You don't need to pick up errors.
Well, I'm just getting
if we're
text
going to
message
start
from the butcher and everybody.
If we're going to
just about-
start critiquing people's
Yes.
performances, that will not. There won't be a lot going on in this show because we all make mistakes. Warriors 40, Sharks 10 last night. You got me rattled there, you 3 idiots. The 3 of you. Just stop.
20
Warriors 40, Sharks 10. Shark Park after dark. You know, only a couple of weeks ago, the Sharks defeating the Melbourne Storm. Everybody's saying, well, gee whiz, you know, they're back. And then the Warriors then put 40 points on them last night. Hoops, you covered that game for Fox Sports last night. They were super impressive once again, the Warriors. And I know we've been saying it for a couple of weeks, but they are embedded in the top 4 and a real premiership threat.
Yeah, it's an example of exceptional coaching from Andrew Webster, because I think a lot of people, off the back of what happened in Vegas, predicted that the Warriors were every chance for the spoon. And there were rumblings coming out of the camp that maybe everybody wasn't on the same page. But the way that he's been able to get those halves playing and the improvement in both of those players, Luke Metcalf and Chanel, they have got a mean pack. You blokes, Jimmy and Gordy, you must love the Warriors forward pack. Fisher Harris has been a genius signing. He is unquestionably one of the buys of the year. And there was a lot of talk and hype in the lead up to the game about the duel between Fish and the Warriors pack, and then Adam Fanua-Blake for Cronulla. But the Warriors just did a complete job on them, and it was the likes of, I love the next generation players that he's got a lot of improvement out of. Demetric Valmunga and also Leka Halasimi. They're flying.
Valmunga's little tip on to Jake. Well, not even tip on there. No look out, looked like you were going out the back to Fisher Harris. To see him stroll over untouched, it was, you kind of had to, you went back and it was like, who actually threw that pass? That was first class for the young forward to have the courage and not just that, but the ability to execute. I thought the Warriors were fantastic yesterday. A big moment in the game, just on the stroke of half time. Trindle puts that kick in. Hamlin Welle actually has the ball in his hands, and Charles Nickel-Cluxton just comes from nowhere to outcompete Braden there. He had the ball in his hands. He was thinking about try. He was thinking about doing his wrestler's celebration. It's not quite July yet, but he loves a good celebration when he does score. But it was a fantastic competitive play. That really really for me changed the game in favour of the Warriors, and that's why they went on to the comprehensive victory that they did.
I've been sort of waiting for the wheels to fall off a little bit. You know what I mean? Because the way they started, and I'm thinking, the Warriors, they've been up, and then there was that ding-dong battle against the Raiders and South last week that we called. I'm thinking they're going to Shark Park. There's 3 highly emotional games, and I tipped against them, and there was no Barnett in the middle, and you're coming up, and then the game's sitting like this, 12-10, and they just go away. So the belief that they're getting at the moment, dare I say it, they are the real deal.
Well,
I thought, like they got off to a start. They've got a couple of those softer wins. They're over there. Yeah. They've got the hype, and everybody's underestimated them. But the last month of footy has been their best month. And it's showing that the game they played against the Raiders, that could have went either way, right? And they backed up against South, and Latrell Mitchell, dare I say, for 40 minutes, like he was at his best. And you go to Shark Park in the dark, and I'm thinking, well, this is it. This is, mate, they've been up for so long, they've been on the road, and they come away with probably their best victory of the year.
What about they go into a bye? They've got Penrith and the Broncos, and they have a bye. Now, what about this for a run home for them? West Tigers, Knights, Titans, Dolphins, Dogs, Dragons, Titans, Para, and then Manly. Like, in all seriousness, we could be talking about a minor premiership side.
We could be talking about 2 home finals.
Yeah, that's how.
That's what we're talking about.
The hard work that they've done and the draw now because of what you're talking about, that gutsy wins that they've got on the road that they've done throughout the year. I'm not saying there's any easy game,
but easy game.
But their draw is very, very good for a team that's in second place at the moment.
They're jumping every hurdle. They normally go really good through the Origin period because they don't have a lot of Origin players, but then they lost Barnett, and Barnett was one of them. And, Metcalf stood up. A clock starts going well.
Rogers
back to his
Dallin,
best. And then they said you got those young forwards on the edges that are just rampaging.
Well, there's an argument, those wingers and the decision to play Roger on the wing, it's been a masterstroke. Dallin was injured. He missed a large chunk at the beginning of the season because he fractured his wrist. But those 2 wingers give him so much strike, so much punch out of the backfield. Yeah. Then Chance churns through metres repeatedly week after week. And they've got a little bit gaudy of that Warriors side of the early 2000s where once they get rolling, they can play a flamboyant style of football that's very hard to defend against. And Cronulla pride themselves. That's what will have Craig Fitzgibbon chewing broken glass the most today. They absolutely pride themselves on their defence, and they were average in the second half.
Yeah, well, 2023, it was the rise of the Warriors, wasn't it? And they did so well. Everybody fell in love with them. And last year, they faded away. They were a shadow. They whether or not they got the emotion wrong or they were riding the highs of 2023, they thought that would be enough. And I think that's why they were questioned so much last year and coming into this year. Like, personally, I was one of those people that thought Roger needs to be the fullback and play charge in the centre. But, and that's why coaches, they know and they persist with what they're doing because they understand that is the best course of action, and it's not the low-hanging fruit of just, all right, let's just throw Roger in, and that'll be a quick fix, but it's not got long-term sustainable success. So congratulations for the Warriors to sticking to their guns. We're right in what we're saying. Raiders, Warriors now in pole position, I believe, to finish definitely top 4, and you can make a strong case for how they should be 1 and 2. And if that is the case, 2 home finals like that, they are going to be incredibly difficult places to go for any opposition. You think about some of those teams that could almost, make up the bottom 4. There's going to be some strong football clubs that make up the bottom 4 of the 8 if things progress as they are. They get through week 1 of finals, and then second week or third week is down a trip to Canberra or New Zealand. Yeah, good luck.
Good luck. What about the Sharks, boys? We've just talked about how good the New Zealand Warriors are going. I'm going to go as far as saying I believe the Sharks are the most underperforming side in the competition with their roster.
They beat Melbourne a couple of weeks ago.
I realise that, but they've had too many of these big, high-scoring losses. Talking to somebody very high up in the game the other day, said, well, Atkinson at 14, do you bring him to 7
You're
and
talking to
ship?
yourself in the mirror, someone really high
I'm
up.
not high up in the game. I'm down the bottom of the food chain. But is there a case to take Nico Hines and put him back to fullback again?
Doesn't have the speed. Silly.
Well, he was there at Melbourne and it
I'm
worked.
just telling you, it's silly.
Well, he's not getting the job done.
I'm high up in the food chain.
Yeah,
It's silly.
You don't think he should be
He's
there?
too slow.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, though, Dobbo, their halves last night, but particularly Nico, at halftime that game was in the balance, and when they came back out, there was way too much sideways, crabbing across movement. Kicks came off the side of the boot. They didn't take control of the game the way that Fitzy would have wanted them to. And Fitzy actually questioned in the press conference after the game the mentality of some of the players. He basically implied, and I'm paraphrasing, that they need to show up ready to put the overalls on, and last night they probably didn't do that.
Yeah, and some teams, like, they need to play Melbourne every week to get dialed in.
themselves up.
And that is, for me, the issue with the Sharks, that they can rise to the occasion, and they can put on they can go to war with a Melbourne Storm, and they can knuckle down and they can compete, they can come from behind, they can navigate those games really well. But then when it comes to perceived lesser opposition, the Roosters are a prime example with 4 or 5 players missing, a couple of players on debut. It was all we have to do is
Turn up. Yep.
and we'll get the job done. Our approach doesn't need to be as dialed in as what it was, and maybe that's Melbourne taking some out of you, but really you pack your. Gordon says it all the time. You pack your attitude for that, and
that's what you bring.
Look, yesterday's game, you can't underestimate how big a loss this is for the Sharks when you look at keeping touch with the top 4.
Yep.
Like, they would have looked at this game and go, right, the Warriors, we're on 9 wins, we're on 7. We can close that to 8. We can keep in touch, where I think, realistically now, that's a huge loss in terms of the ability to stay in touch with the top 4.
Well, there's now that clear 4-point buffer.
Yeah.
Canberra in 4th. They obviously play very shortly. And then you got Cronulla in 5th on 16 points. So, yeah, in all likelihood, Jimmy, that could cost them a spot in the top 4, and it could mean that they're in that sudden death mode come September.
And if you're the Sharks, right, you turn up there yesterday, this is our chance. You don't know whether you're going to win or lose, but this is the Warriors. This is who we're going to face. And sometimes you get, Jimmy, I don't know whether you did it, but you go, we're going to meet these guys down the track a little bit. Let's just see where we're at. Let's just see where we're at and where they're at the moment. And as you said, but they did that to the Storm.
Yeah, that was 3 weeks ago. Then the Roosters Roosters put 42 points on them. They have a bye, and then the Warriors put 40 points on them. I think like we're all saying, oh, well, they beat the Storm. Well, that was a month ago.
Can I ask the boys, what about Dobbo saying that Nico Hines should be back at fullback?
I disagree. I don't know if that changes much.
I'm with Gordy based on that. Watching him last night, he does. I don't know if he's carrying an injury or what, but like when he won the Dally M medal, he played very direct, very square, and he loved to run the football. Yeah. But last night, he did appear as though, I don't know if it's if he's carrying a hammy or a quad or what, but he didn't seem as sharp as what he has previously, and he didn't have that explosive power off the mark.
And look, I don't know the numbers, but I think the Sharks, they do concede quite a few tries from kicks on last plays, and to throw him in the mixer back there to sort that out, I think that would add a new degree of difficulty that Nico Hines just doesn't need in his football right now.